welcome back to my channel. I tried to record this earlier when the light was better, but my camera died, and so it's a bit dark in here, but I think it adds to the sad girl winter vibes aesthetic that we're going for right now. We've got a nice cozy candle in the background. I've got my now cold tea that was hot when I originally tried to film this, and today we are talking about sad girl reading for a sad girl winter. We're talking seasonal depression. We're embracing it. We're embracing it. It's a hot, sad girl winter because, let's be honest, all hot girls are sad girls in the winter. And we're embracing it. This is the time for us to purge, to read sad literature that makes us sob and cry, and just fully cleanse ourselves. Because what is hotter than a girl crying? Name one thing. I'll wait. All jokes aside, I'm embracing this seasonal depression era of my life by reading more sad books and just allowing myself to be a little bit sad since it's so gray and gloomy outside. In September, I moved to Seattle from Florida, and so this winter has been very dark and gloomy to me. It's really getting under my skin, but I've decided that it's only gonna make me hotter. It's character development, okay? So I decided to share with you some books that I think are the perfect sad hot girl winter books that you should be reading if you want to cry. All of these books are either books that have already made me cry, books that I am feeling like are going to make me cry within the next couple days because I'm currently reading them, or books that I have on good authority that will also make all of us cry. Also, I'm drinking a chai and it's quite good. I think my neighbors know that I'm recording a YouTube video and that's just a little bit awkward, but we're gonna move on. We also have my cat Juniper sitting in to listen because she's a sad girl as well. Before I recommend any of these books to you, for every single one of these books, since we're talking about sad books, look up the trigger warnings. I realize that we're joking about being sad and hot and all of that, but also if you're really struggling, I don't recommend these books, so just keep that in mind. I think we're gonna start with a few that I've already read and they have made me cry. The first book up on our list is The Stationery Shop by Marianne Kamali. I'm not really sure if I'm pronouncing her name right, so I apologize in advance. But I read this actually last spring, and I remember distinctly sitting on my couch, finishing it at like 1 a.m. and crying, but it was one of those cries that's like healing. It wasn't like it wasn't totally destroying my life. It was just a solid cry where I was sad but also hopeful, you know what I mean? This is basically a literary fiction set in 1953, and basically it follows our main character Roya, whose favorite place to go is the stationery shop, where she meets a boy who is very involved in politics, and it's basically about their relationship, and it's told from her perspective when she was younger and also when she's older and married to someone else. They basically come back into contact with one another in their old age. And for some reason, you know at the beginning that there was something that happened between Roya and her lover. And so the whole book, you're kind of like figuring out what happened between them. And it's also about having multiple loves in your life. And the ending was just so heartbreaking, but heartwarming at the same time. And it will make you cry. Up next is a book that's very, very popular. I know this book is kind of controversial, and I think there's some stuff going on with the author, but it did make me cry, so it's making the list. And that is Where the Crawdads Sing. I read this also last spring, and it was just, I don't know. I also thought the film was beautiful, and I'm not gonna say too much about this book because you probably heard about it and you know what it's about, or you have an idea, but I will say that this did make me cry. And again, similar to The Stationery Shop, it was more of a healing, hopeful crying at the end, not a everything, my life is over kind of crying. Next up, this book wasn't one that fully made me cry, but overall the reading experience felt strenuous, but in a beautiful way, and it was really difficult to read and very sad, but also very moving and very poetic, and that is On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong. His writing, well, he is a poet, so his prose, very poetic. The main character's name is Little Dog, and he's basically writing this letter to his mom, who cannot read, so he knows she'll never be able to read it, so he's able to be very vulnerable, knowing that she's never gonna read it, which just gives it a whole different kind of sadness to it while you're reading it. But I thought it was a beautiful book, and it's also very short, so it's easy to get through. And if you want something that's a little bit heart-wrenching, heartfelt, and also very poetic and very rooted in family history and Vietnamese culture, then I think you would really enjoy this book. Going full sad girl. I read my first Joan Didion. Again, all of these three books, actually all of these books I read last spring. I guess I was in my sad girl area last spring too. I read my first Joan Didion last spring, and I ended up reading The Year of Magical Thinking. And first of all, let's just appreciate this cover. I really love it. I have so many little tabs in here of sentences that I've marked, and basically this is a book about Joan Didion losing her husband and also dealing with her daughter struggling with illness, and just how grief can change the way you think. I thought this book was beautiful and so sad but so insightful, and it made me want to read all of Joan Didion's other works, so I definitely will be reading more of her. Let's see if there's any quotes that I can give you. I mindlessly turned the pages of the dictionary that he had always left open on the table by the desk. When I realized what I had done, I was stricken. What word had he last looked up? What had he been thinking? I needed to be alone so that he could come back. So basically it's about the kind of mind tricks or like magical thinking that your brain does when dealing with something so traumatic, and how a lot of times she would kind of think in this not crazy way, but a little bit where like if she threw away all of his shoes, then there was no way that he was going to be able to come back. So heartbreaking and sad to read about someone going through so much loss. You will cry. You will cry, you'll be moved. That's all I have to say. Next up on the list, we have a book that I read years ago, and still it lives rent-free in my head, and I still distinctly remember the day that I finished it and was sobbing on my floor. And that is The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. This book is set during World War II, and it is about two sisters who live in Paris and how the war affects their lives. You can see why it would be sad. I don't think I need to explain more than that, but I thought it was beautiful at the time, and I also don't remember a ton of the plot anymore, so I might reread it at some point. But if you want a good cry, this one will do it to you. Okay. This book is one that I don't technically recommend to anyone because it's so controversial and so polarizing and triggering. You can probably guess what it is, but I do want to tell you that I love it because I love Hanya Yanagihara's writing, and if you're gonna get to know me as a reader, I think you should know what kind of books I like. And if you are in any way going to be triggered, do not read this book. But this book did make me cry, obviously. I think it's beautiful. I won't say too much, but that is obviously A Little Life. You see all the tabs. I'm definitely going to reread this at some point, maybe even this winter. I am planning on reading more of her writing. I just had to give this an honorable mention because I love it so much, and I think about it probably weekly. And I read it a year and a half ago. Moving on. Wait, I need some tea first. Okay, this is a book that I'm currently reading, and I haven't cried yet, but it is sad, and have on good authority that it's going to make me cry. And so far, I know that this book is going to be a 5-star read for me, and I'll probably talk about it way more on future videos. But that is The Great Believers by Rebecca Mackay. I think it's Mackay. I think that's how you say it. But essentially, this is, oh, there's cat hair all over it. Judy, what'd you do? So essentially, this book is based in 1985 during the AIDS epidemic. So there's kind of like two plot lines. One is in 1985 and one is in 2015. In 1985, we're closely following our main character, Yale, who is basically watching all of his friends die, which is very depressing. And then one of his best friends, Nico, who the book opens with, we're attending his funeral. His sister, Fiona, is the main character for the second plot line that's going on in 2015. She's actually trying to find her daughter who was part of a cult. There's a lot going on in this book, and writing is like so crystal clear, and it just feels like it's in my blood. Like I want to live, breathe, and think about this book. I'm not even halfway through it, and I've already basically given it 5 stars. I'm just gonna rapid fire the next few, because all of these are super popular, but I just haven't got around to reading them. But I think and I have on good authority that they will make us cry. So we have Hamnet, which is basically a historical fiction about Shakespeare's family that's apparently devastating. Then we have A Man Called Ova. I've had this book for 5 years and I need to bring myself to read it, but I've heard that it's very sad and heartwarming. Do we even need to talk about this? The Song of Achilles. I'm going to read this year, I swear to it, I'm going to. Last but not least, a disturbing but hopefully great book, These Violent Delights. I literally went to the library and got this on a whim because of another booktube video that I was watching, and apparently it's about two classmates who become obsessed with each other, and that obsession leads to God knows what, so I definitely am gonna read this. I need some tea. Hopefully you found some good book recommendations to make you cry and feel a little hotter during the sad girl winter. And if you have any sad girl book recommendations, please leave them in the comments. And if you want to follow me on Instagram, I'll leave that link below. And other than that, I'll see you next time. Bye.